In the last section, we went and took a look at the enzyme documentation, and we've now got a better idea of how we're going to use enzyme to test out our app component. So in this section, we're going to do a big refactor of this app.test file. I'm going to first get started by finding all the code inside of this it statement right here and removing all of it. So no longer are you and I going to manually create divs and then render our app component inside of it. We're instead going to rely upon one of those three renders that are implemented by enzyme. So I'm going to highlight all that stuff and delete it. I now no longer need React DOM, so I'm going to clean that up at the top as well. Then at the top, I will import enzyme, or more specifically, one function off the enzyme library. So I'm going to import shallow from enzyme, like so. Shallow right here is a function that we're going to use to render out an instance of our app component and none of its children. So the shallow function right here is exactly the same thing as what we spoke about just a moment ago with this shallow render that renders just the component and none of its children. Now, one thing I want to clarify is that the component that we render, if it has vanilla DOM elements inside of it, like say a div or a header tag or a text input, those will all be rendered. It's specifically React child components that will not be rendered. So now, inside of our it statement, we can attempt to render an instance of app using the shallow function. So we'll say const wrapped equals shallow, and then we'll place our app component inside of a JSX tag like so. Now, one quick thing I want to mention here, we're using the terminology wrapped just to kind of indicate that the object that we got back from this is a wrapped version of our app component. Wrapped specifically means that this is a component that has some additional functionality loaded on top. I personally don't really care for the term wrapped. I would love to instead use the term component because I think that's a little bit more clear what's going on here, but all the documentation around enzyme calls it wrapped, so we're going to stick with the documentation. But just so you know, on my own personal projects, I always call this component because it's a little bit more obvious what's going on. Okay, so now that we've got our wrapped component back, we're going to then import our comment box component into this file, and then we can attempt to find that component inside this wrapped object, just as we saw in the documentation a moment ago. So at the top, I will import comment box from, and notice we are now inside the __ test directory. So we're going to go up into the components folder and then get the comment box file. Now we can write out the actual expectation. So I'll write out the expect function. Inside of here is going to be the thing or the value that we're trying to make an assertion about or an expectation about. So in this case, I want to look at this wrapped object and attempt to find all instances of the comment box component inside. So to do so, I'll write out wrapped.find comment box. So we're going to look at the component that we just created and we're going to find every copy of comment box inside of it. Now when we call find right here, it returns back to us an array. That array contains every instance of comment box that was found. Now you and I don't actually care about the real instance of comment box that was found. All we care about is saying there's exactly one copy of comment box that was created. So because this returns an array, I'm going to pull off the .length property. So now, wrap.find comment box.length right here, in theory, is going to be either 1, indicating we've got one copy of comment box, or 0, indicating no comment boxes were found. So then the last thing we have to do is to write out an expectation. So this is going to be the part where we write out the actual matcher on the end and say what we expect this value right here to be. So in this case, we want there to be exactly one comment box. So this entire expression right here will return the number 1. So I'm going to put on a matcher of 2 equal, and I'll pass it 1, like so. So this is yet another matcher. It's very similar to the one that we just saw of 2 contain. 2 equal is going to look at the value that we provided and make sure that that value is exactly equal to the number right here. And that's it. That's all we have to write. So this is going to make sure that there is one comment box inside of our app component. So let's test this out. I'm going to make sure that I start my test suite back up. Now, I already started my test suite just so you don't have to sit and watch mine boot up. But remember, you can start your test suite by running npm run test. So once you get that going, I'll then flip back over here. I'm going to save this file, and then I should be able to see my test running. And hopefully, after this completes, boy, this is just taking forever. I'm going to do some work on this, I promise you. I'm going to get these the duration of these test runs down because right now it's way too long. Okay, so very good. Took my test forever, but it did in fact pass. So now I feel pretty confident that I'm showing exactly one instance of the comment box inside my app component. Now, one thing that I like to do, and this is highly recommended whenever you're getting started with testing, is after you make the test work one time, try to make it break. The idea behind this is that you're going to make sure that you're not getting an erroneous pass of your tests. And that's something that we're going to be doing quite a bit throughout this course. We're going to be making sure that our tests break at least one time to say that, yeah, our tests are doing the right thing. So I'm going to go back over to my test file, and I'm going to change the toEqual over here to be any other number. So I'll say 9. All I want to do right now is make sure that if I put in the incorrect value right here, I see my test break. And that's going to just make me feel a little bit more confident that my test is behaving the way I expect. So I'll then save the file. I'll flip back over. And then hopefully less than 12 seconds, thank goodness, a little bit faster this time. So you can see that the test failed. I thought that we were going to get back a value of 9, but we actually got 1. So clearly the test is working as we expect. And then, so the very last step, once we made it break, we'll then make it work one more time. I'll save the file, and we should be able to see it go back to green, which means our test is passing. Awesome. Okay, so this right here is much more in line with the tests that you and I are going to be writing throughout the rest of this application. So with that in mind, let's continue in the next section, and we'll write out the other test for our app component.